Yep, the recording's starting up now.
Tell me when.
You should be good to go now.
All right, I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for September 9th. Let's start by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. I don't see anybody for public comment, but do we have any public comment? None heard. Brianna?
Okay, I don't have any communication and correspondence. And that I could see, unless anybody has any.
There's one.
Maybe the dog or something.
All right. Let's go on to the meeting minutes then.
There's two meeting minutes, August 20th with the regular meeting and August 25th, the special meeting to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve both sets of meeting minutes, the regular and special meetings.
I'll second.
If we're going to vote on them at once, I can vote on one. I'm going to abstain from the other.
Me too.
And let's do them separately, I guess.
Probably best.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the August 20th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'll
All
make-
right.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 25th special meeting minutes.
I'll second. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mark, you
Abstain.
abstaining?
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. At this point, per our discussion, I'd like to make a motion to make a addition to our agenda under new business to discuss the Candlewood water line. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it was brought to our attention that Greg would like to discuss the water line for Candlewood because of the impact to the school projects. So Greg, if you could take us through it, please.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. So 2 months ago at your regular meeting, I made a presentation to you about the Candlewood Lake Road Water Main Project that is primarily in support of two things. One is for the new school and to deal with contaminated wells that are between Abbey Road and the school. And you tabled the motion to pass that because of obvious reasons. It's a lot of money. You wanted more information. And I sent to all of you, at least I know I sent to Mark or Glenn, the PER, the preliminary engineering report. It was a 50 or 60 page document, and it had a lot of information in it. I sent that to you right after that meeting 2 months ago. And the idea was for you to review that document, ask any questions, and for there to be a vote at your next meeting on that project. Well, that next meeting was canceled because of the August 4th storm. And I thought you had an executive session sometime after that. Maybe you didn't, I don't know. But here we are 2 months later, and we have another school project steering committee meeting on Friday. And I will tell you that they are getting a little antsy on this because if there's not a commitment for the town to do this project, they've got to put in wells and other things on the project. And they're really looking for an answer from the town side if we're going to put that main in or not. So that's the update over the past couple of months. I was hoping Steve Dunn would be on this call. He's, I know, on vacation, but I thought might have tied in, but I guess not. So that's where we are.
Who is they?
the school, the Huckleberry Hill School project.
Right, but who is they? Who is the person is it the architects? Is it the building committee, our town building committee? Who is it?
It's the state, and I don't know who with the state is. I don't know the exact details, but I know that the project team is getting all of their approvals and lining up everything from on the state for this reimbursement. And again, I'm not that close to it, but the one that's pushing me on this is a steering committee because they're being pushed by the state on the project. And I'm sorry, I don't have names or titles, but that's how it comes back to me.
Do you have the spreadsheet in front of you by chance? Because I can't seem to find it. Can we get that up on the screen?
Are you talking about the sources and uses of funds that I
Yes, the original
presented?
presentation you did a few weeks ago or a few months ago.
Maybe Marcia can do that. It is in my package and I do have it in front of me, but I don't have,
There it is. It's up right now.
Yeah. The important thing to understand with this project is, number one, there is going to be an assessment on everyone along the way. And in the project engineering report, preliminary engineering report, I had the preliminary assessment table on how these costs are going to be assessed to both the school and to the property owners. And I stressed the point that assessment calculation, which I did, is preliminary because it's about 8 or 10 months old. But the point on this project is the full capital cost is going to be assessed to all of the people abutting that property main. And the biggest one there is the school.
So if we voted no, just saying if we voted no, the school would go ahead and put wells on the property?
Yes,
So then if they ran this water main down the street, the school would still get assessed for the frontage as well because they're part of the line there or not?
yes, they would be assessed. And again, that assessment table is in that preliminary engineering report that I sent to all of you. I'm sorry, I don't have a hard copy in front of me, but the answer is yes.
Can I ask on that, is there a public hearing for the folks who live on Candle Lake Road that would end up having to that will be getting assessed? Like, is that something that they've been notified that this is a possibility, or are they gonna get hit with a bill?
So let me talk about that. There is a town ordinance that talks about how the assessment calculation is made. And in that ordinance, it talks about having a public meeting for all of the residents assessed. And I think it maybe to the general public. So the answer is yes, there will be a meeting and we will finalize the assessment table. They will be told about the pressure that they'll be receiving. They'll be told about the scope of the work, and they will be given the assessment table to know what their basically 20-year assessment is going to be. That's correct.
Okay.
So basically, if we vote no, we're going to absorb the cost of the wells into the school project, and we're going to pay the fee as well to the water company. So we're
Well,
going to
if
get
you-
double.
If you vote no, the decision has to be made to run this main to just satisfy the contaminated wells along the way, because the school is not going to want to pay for both a water assessment for a main and the capital cost to put in wells, would be my guess.
Right, we wouldn't need to run this in front of the school, therefore the school wouldn't have to pay an assessment on it.
But I will tell you, one of the contaminated wells is right across the street from the school at 99 Candlewood Lake Road, right across the street from the driveway into the school. So that main is going to run to satisfy these contamination issues, is going to run to the school. So the school will be assessed.
It will be assessed something, but that's about halfway through the property line. And it's
Yep.
based on frontage, so it would be half of the frontage. There's lots of calculations, as you know, Greg.
Yep.
I don't have to preach to the choir to you. I did look at the report that you sent me. I'm not sure who else you sent it to. As far as the wells failing in the school and all that, and I get all that. The project makes sense, but again, it feels very rushed to me. I think the people on the street, I mean, we saw the litigation Bethel went through when they had to put in a sewer main and the people sued, I mean, a water main, and people sued, and it was years in litigation because people didn't want it. I know there are some people that clearly must want it. I don't know that for a fact, but it appears that way. But we also don't know, Huckleberry's still not through any of approvals yet. So we don't even know, I don't know how the steering committee is forcing an issue when there's not even an approval to put a school there yet. Hopefully it gets there.
I think they're working under the assumption that they will get both zoning and wetlands approval. That's me talking, not them. I think they're working under that assumption.
And Mark, shouldn't we look at this as though if the school project doesn't move forward, then this doesn't move forward as well? Correct?
That's not what
that would be.
That's not what I'm hearing.
Why would we need? Well, why would we need to run into the schools if we're not going to have the school there?
There is at least 3 or 4 or 5, maybe more, property owners along the route from Nabby Road all the way to Huckleberry Hill School that have wells that fail in sodium and or chloride levels.
Did you say 3?
Oh, I don't know the exact number because I don't have the PER in front of me. It's about a half a dozen. And we didn't even sample everybody. We surveyed, not we, Dr. Sullivan, our director of health for the town, sent a letter to many of the property owners along this route, and some of them agreed to let the town sample their wells, which they did. Some failed, some barely passed, and some passed with a greater margin of safety at these maximum levels. And for that reason, we went to the Department of Public Health with this low interest rate loan and this 25% forgiveness project, really for 2 purposes: to satisfy those contaminated wells and to provide this municipal water to the new school.
So we're in a situation where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, because they're blaming the well contamination on the town.
I don't know that that's been proven, but I'm not involved in the litigation. That's something for Steve Dunn and Tom Beecher, but I think that's they're asserting that, and but I don't think there's any proof of that, but that's the issue.
So Greg, $1.5 million. Hopefully the school goes there. If the school goes there, I'm 100% on board. New water main for school. I'm 100% with you on that. If the school doesn't go there, and we're talking about 5 wells, 10 wells, 20 wells, a well in Connecticut's $20,000, $25,000. We could buy new wells for everybody and pay less than they're going to even get assessed over this 20-year period.
Yes, it's a different conversation if the school doesn't go in. That's correct. Now, I will tell you, if the school doesn't go in, the Huckleberry Hill School water passes all of these standards, but there's been a lot of remediation at Huckleberry at the existing school. So longer term, there still may be a problem if you don't build a new school and still have Huckleberry Hill there.
I wish we were closer. I don't like doing things rushed. I wish we knew a real good estimate of what it's going to cost for these people's assessment. I wish we had the public hearing for them to have their input, yay or nay. I'd love to get a feeling from these people before some of them may feel like we're jamming a water main down their throat. They may not want it, and they're going to get assessed $20,000, $30,000, $40,000.
They're not going to have a choice. If the Board of Selectmen decides to put in this main, it's not a vote for approval. It's here's what's going to be happening. So there's not an approval for this project. It's if the Board of Selectmen approve it, the main's going in.
Greg, I just want to clarify one thing, that when we talk about the costs, this is just the funding for the project. And let's say that for budgeting purposes, it's $1.5 million. We would be paid back our $249,450 with the assessments, and the loan would be paid back out of the assessments, and our true cost is really our assessment. Is that a good way to put it simply?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, our true cost is 1.191 million, right?
But we're going to get that back in 20 years of assessments to all of the people on the main.
Yeah, but the biggest payer is the town, right?
The biggest payer is the school, yes, the town.
It's like 80% of the amount of money, I thought, is the town side. The homeowners are only 20% of this, so it's not really a 20-year payback. It's going to be a 50-year payback.
Yeah. I don't know about 50 years.
Well, it'll never pay back, but that's besides the point. It's a water main. It's a,
But our true cost is our assessment, not the 249. That's the loan up front that we're providing. I just wanted to clarify.
So we at this point would have to approve 1.837850 at this point, of which then we would start to creep it back, right, Marcia?
Then we would start getting it back. We would put it in the waterline assessment fund. And so we would have a big receivable out there. It would slowly come back into the waterline assessment fund. And the way it would hit the general fund is through our assessment, but whatever we get assessed as the school.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What comes, because this is a little out of my warehouse, what comes first, this water main project or the school? So basically my question would be, let's just say we approve this, right? We go through all this expense and then the school doesn't go where it's supposed to go, but we're already in bed with this expense, or is this go hand in hand? Whereas if the school doesn't go, we can say, well, we don't need to do this now because we're not having the school, or this is going before everything else, so.
The way I would answer that is if the school project didn't go forward, you would still use the pressure in this main to supply water to the existing school.
if we maintained a school there.
If we maintain the school there, that's correct.
But you say the board, I understand there's no vote on it, but the Board of Selectmen have to hold a public hearing to pass this project, right?
Not, I think with this executive order from Lamont, I think it's just by your meeting, I believe, is all we need at this point.
So there's no avenue, if you have 30 homes, I'm gonna use round numbers, and let's say there were 5 of them that said, yeah, we really want this water main, and you had 25 people stand up and said, this is gonna bankrupt me, our well works great, we don't want it, we like sodium in our, whatever they say, that 25 people didn't want it and 5 did, we're gonna do it for 5 people, and that boggles my mind that we haven't had a hearing on it of some sort. I know Lamont says we can use an executive order. Do we have to?
Well, again, I can, if you'd like, I can get you a statement from the school project, and I can have them say to us the deadline for a decision either way on this versus Wells, because, we got to work backward from when that main has to be in service to meet their school project schedule.
Because I don't understand why we couldn't, I mean, I agree with Mark that I think I'd like to know from Tom Beecher if this is something that we have to do or if it's something that we're able to do with the executive order. I don't like making this type of decision.
Yeah,
I agree with everything on that.
I mean, even if we did it as a contingent upon the school being approved, I mean, building the town providing new wells would be way less expensive than this. And I agree that the burden on people who don't need water because their wells are fine, that seems rather unfair.
I think there's a lot of burden on a lot of people right now. So I feel like this just piles it.
So I understand exactly what you're all saying, but this is how every other water main project's gone in town with these assessments. And it does increase property value because you're getting municipal water. And I know the argument for cash flow and monies, can be tight for certain, properties or whatever. And I understand where you all are. So I'm getting the sense that you're kind of table this again, and I'm fine with that. But I will tell you at Friday's steering committee meeting, they're going to ask for an update, and I'm going to say it was tabled, and then I'm going to ask for a document from them stating when a decision needs to be made to keep their project on schedule. And I'll share that with you and Steve when they come back to me.
Greg, could they table it until next month and do like a Zoom public hearing like we did for the budget?
They being the Board of Finance?
Yes.
I assume so, yes.
Hey, Greg, what's the cost of the project if we don't go all the way to the school?
Well, if we stop per linear foot, so look there, construction cost, it's $380 a linear foot. So, take off as many feet as you'd like and redo the calculation.
I would like you to give me those numbers if you have them. I would hope you'd have them.
Okay, tell me where you'd like the main to stop, and I can do that. How far back?
I don't know. I mean, if we didn't provide the main to the schools, how much would the residents get assessed? I guess is my question.
I'm sorry, say it again.
If we don't have the main going to the schools, does that change the assessment for the residences?
If the objective is to provide water to all of the residents who have failing wells, the answer is no, because the northernmost property with the failing results is at 99 Candlewood Lake Road. Coincidentally, that's right across the street from the driveway into the school.
And if I remember some of the conversations correctly, Greg, if we didn't have the school in there, then we would bump up against assessment caps where the town would have to pick up some of that because there's a limit on how much we can assess every property. Is that correct?
We're picking it up one way or the other, Marcia. Either we're picking it up through the school or we'd have to pick it up by bumping up to the cap.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
It would be more for but the bottom line is it would be more for those homeowners if the school isn't on it. So if the school is going in, and it probably is, I could be in favor of it. But I find it very hard to believe, Greg, that they can't put a water main in. They haven't broken ground on a school. Forget approvals. They haven't broken ground on a school. There's no way it takes longer to put a water main in than it takes to complete a school. So why do they need the approval on a water main before we start the school?
It's got something to do with the town. Mark, I can't answer that. I know I will not answer that to your satisfaction. What I will do, though, at the Friday meeting, when they say to me again why they have to have this approval sooner than later, I'm going to ask for it in writing, because all I have now is a verbal comment from our meeting 2 weeks ago from them.
Why can't somebody from the steering committee that's telling you we have to, we need, we want, this has to happen, maybe when it's on our agenda should come and be able to answer Mark's questions and everybody else's questions? So I'm not saying that you don't know what you're talking about, but like you said, they're telling you what they need and you're not, maybe that's what we need, is somebody from that committee that needs it now.
Sure, I can have somebody from Tecton or the engineering company, speak more authoritative on the need for this deadline issue.
Is the steering committee the municipal building committee that you're referring to?
No, this is the school project steering committee. The Board of Ed chair is on it. Steve Dunn, the folks from Tecton, John Burrell. Marcia, I believe, attends the meetings, and our next meeting is this Friday. We have them, I think, every 2 or 3 weeks, Marcia, on a Friday morning.
Yes, and I don't attend. That sometimes we have Kevin attend.
Yes.
So listening to all of this, I think that we're all sort of a little hesitant to taking this big step. One, we do need the feedback from the steering committee. Two, we need feedback from Beecher saying if we can make this decision or not make this decision. Three is, I don't even know. How about
Glenn,
those
if I may,
Go ahead.
In order to vote on this, we would need the Board of Selectmen would have to vote on it first and put a motion before us to even vote on it with a number.
They
There's
did.
nothing for us to vote on
They
tonight.
passed that already.
They did.
And the numbers haven't changed at all?
Correct.
Okay. But I want to be,
That's what they brought to us 2
Okay.
months ago, Mark.
you're right. Okay. I remember that now.
So
But
Glenn, the other part
in
I would
order
add,
to use, I'm sorry, go ahead.
sorry, the other part I would add into what else we need is to find out if the normal process is to hold a public hearing. Can we still have that? I mean, that's, I don't know. I know there are timelines on calling a public meeting and when, when you have it, but I'd like to give that opportunity, especially where we've all become quite proficient at Zoom. Why can't we have a Zoom public meeting?
When we're taking the choice out of the voters' hands, I find it that for me and probably everybody here, I have to double, triple think everything when we're going to use this executive fiat that we're just making decisions for everybody's financial future and they don't get a say. That's not fair. And we really have to have all the dot the I's and cross the T's for me to be comfortable voting on something.
What is the average assessment for each of those houses? I mean, I know that not everybody's frontage is the same, but if you divide that
Boy.
cost by the houses, what was that number?
Marcia, is there any way you can pull up the assessment table? I'm sorry, I'm at home and I don't have my,
Greg, while Marshall looks for that, this assessment would only include for the water main. The homeowners themselves would still be responsible to dig up their yard, their patios, whatever, drill through their foundations, run a water main in, put either a pressure reducer probably, or a pump system. The homeowner would still be responsible for all of that on top of the water main.
And
That's
that's a one time.
And that's
That's
another $8,000 to $10,000 if they're not going it through asphalt, driveways, patios, decks, whatever.
So I'm not sure if we want to pull up the assessment table
No.
that, because it's not fine. Steve was working on it and there's a lot of calculations on depending on, how it's going to be calculated. So I don't think anything is final on that.
yeah.
I do not recall seeing an official table, and Greg, you sent me a
No,
lot of
we never
information
got
that
an
was really
official
good.
one.
You have
Like I
not
said-
received an official one because I don't think this, because as I understand it, it's the selectmen's call and I don't think they've called it yet.
Right. There's a
Okay.
limit that they can go up to, and they have to make a decision of where that would go, and we don't have that information yet either.
You talking about the 10% limit?
Yeah,
Okay, that only applies to WPCA. It does not apply to water main, according to Tom Beecher, as I recall.
okay. As I recall, Tom said there was a cap and a limit that we could charge an assessment to a property for a water main as well, but maybe I'm wrong. We know we couldn't charge them $1 million to put a water main in front of their house, so there's something.
Okay, so I think I know where we are.
Well, hold on, Greg, hold on. Dan, you haven't said a word and you've been listening, so step up here.
I've been listening. Quite honestly, if Mark and Eileen are in agreement, there's not that pretty much says it all to me. But the question I do have one question, and that is, when we started talking about this months and months ago, it was because there was liability to the town. And the question is, the short-term and long-term liability of the town. Currently, it's half a dozen wells or so, but over time, is it still the expectation or some level of probability that it's the full 30 plus homes that are liable, and that would impact the difference in costs?
Well, it won't impact the difference because the main's going to run from Nabby Road to the school. They're all going to be assessed the same number if the wells are contaminated or not.
Right. No, I'm talking about the alternative of putting in of individual wells as the alternative, as a much lower cost alternative if it was only a few homes.
Well, what the town's doing now is buying bottled water for these homes, at least in 1 or 2 cases.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's my personal opinion that we should probably do this, but I also agree that having all the information in the hearing is the right thing to do. But once that's done, I'll probably be in favor of it. But I agree with the consensus that giving people a right to speak is the right thing to do.
Yeah. You know, I'm a little caught off guard here because I only learned from Marcia a few hours ago that this wasn't on the agenda. And I believe Steve told me it was planned to be, and I assumed he was going to be on the call. So I'm a little bit kind of thrown in here on a new agenda item for you guys, and I apologize for that.
No, I think during all of this whole pandemic thing, it went to the wayside, to be honest with you, Greg. We did table it. The last meeting didn't attend, so it's sort of, it got a little wishy-washy. But I think also, I don't feel that we feel comfortable as a group making this decision based on so many variables out there. It's a lot of money. The town's going to be on the hook for most of it. We haven't seen the final numbers of the assessments yet and the usage, the assessments and usage part of it. I get that the school steering committee needs it. But yet I'm with Mark, another month isn't going to hurt us on this unless the loan goes away. Is the loan going away at any time from now?
No.
So we could get the response back from Beecher that we can make this decision without a town meeting. Do we have any feedback from any of the homeowners at any point? Does anybody have any correspondence from these homeowners that is in favor?
I and others get phone calls saying, when's it going in? We can't wait. Now,
That's from how many?
the only calls I receive are saying it's only 2 or 3, but every call that I get is, when's it going in? We can't wait. And then the next call is, can you run it further up Candlewood Lake Road to my property? And I say, no. The project's terminating at the northernmost point where we have a contaminated well, and that is at 99 Candlewood Lake Road, based on that PER report, if you take a look at that table. People,
so there is no contamination north, and there's no contamination that we're anticipating.
I wouldn't say it that way. What I would say is all the tests that we ran, of all the residents Dr. Sullivan contacted, for those that agreed to let us sample their wells, the northernmost is at 99, the Candlewood Lake Road. There could be some further north, but not to our knowledge.
Glenn, what I'd like to, you asked for an opinion from Attorney Beecher of can we do this? I'm guessing we probably can because of that executive order. The first select or the selectman can make this decision. But what I'd like to hear from Attorney Beecher is, can we have the town meeting? Can we let the townspeople talk about this and have a public hearing? Can that normal process happen? Not let's jump to the extreme and see if we can do the extreme. Let's see if we can do the normal.
I agree.
And
Would you
Greg,
like-
I want to apologize. I don't want to sound like I'm jumping on you tonight. I understand you were caught off guard in a pressure situation here, and I'm not trying to come down on you. I know you're doing your job. I feel strongly about not voting on things when we taking that vote away from the townspeople.
So either Marcia or I or Glenn will get to Tom Beecher on that very point. Mark, is that what you'd like us to do?
I would love that. That's just me speaking. I don't know anybody else.
And again, I agree. I mean, I'd like to, that twice in one night?
The same thing. It's
I
twice on
didn't
the
do
same
the
thing.
thing.
Let's not get crazy.
No, I would just like to see if we can have the opportunity to do a public hearing. That is a burden on homeowners, and it sounds like it's a need. And likely if there's one, there's more. If there are 6 people or there are more homes that need it, but I just would like to see the full process. If we have time to do it and it's not as much of a time, if we can make a decision with having people voice their opinions, I would feel better about it.
And when can we get an official list on the assessments and the dollars per household? I don't care if you call it household 1, 2, 3, 4, so we're not calling out names, but when can we get that official?
So Glenn, I finalized that and I had it reviewed by the tax assessor and the tax collector's office. So my final assessment calculation has been sent to Steve maybe about a month and a half ago, something like that. So it's done. And it's up to Steve to release that to all of you, and that'll be part of the public meeting. So it's complete.
All right. And Marcia, you don't have that?
I don't have the final one. That was Greg and Steve that were working on that.
So just as another thing, I know there's a couple of companies that make salt removal systems for wells. Has anybody looked into anything like that?
So the answer is, when we hired a company to look at the alternatives to this project, they looked at every alternative, and in that PER report, they do a net present value of all the other alternatives, and they concluded that the water main, on a net present value calculation over 20 years or whatever, this is the most cost-effective solution. So that is part of the formal application process, and that work is complete.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask a question for the steering committee now that I'm really thinking about all of this. What is the cost of the new wells going to be? I mean, then if it's a no-brainer, if the new wells cost us tremendous amount of money, this becomes even more of a no-brainer. And two, what drove the initial water to the schools? Was it the cat, dragging the tail, or the tail dragging the cat on this process? Were the schools and the new process and the new architect saying, instead of doing wells, it's beneficial to bring in a water main because of, I don't know, whatever reasons, far be it for me? Or is this just, we have these 6 homes that are having issues and we should just throw the water main in there and let it carry? I mean, what's the driving behind it?
So I'll give you the best I can answer that, and Marcia can chime in. Over a year ago, closer to a year and a half, Dr. Sullivan was the one getting the complaints from residents about high levels of sodium and chlorides.
Yep.
And that's when he started the sampling program. And early last year, he found out or stumbled upon a Department of Public Health grant for this very thing. And at the same time, there was talk about a new school project. So both of those came together last spring and last summer. And that's when we put together the application to DPH, and it took almost a year to get it approved. So that's kind of the timeline.
So the schools didn't come out and they're talking about building the new school saying we absolutely need a water main, but the schools now have decided they need a water source that the current wells won't, or whatever, however they're getting their water, won't suffice for the new school, or not?
That's correct. Not only is there not enough volume, there's not enough pressure. So for fire suppression and for toilets and drinking and everything else, their project included wells and booster pumps for the tune of something like, don't quote me on this, $300,000 or $400,000. So that's their contribution to this main project, if you will. They're happy, I shouldn't say that. If this main is not approved, they'll go ahead and put those wells in and those booster pumps, but they just know which way, they just want to know which way to go, because they're kind of in that final design, if you will, or design part of the project now, and setting aside the space for the wells and the booster pumps and all of that is part of their, planning and design processing.
So in your chart, let's go back to that chart of money, please.
Marcia's gonna.
Dan, can you pull that up? Thanks.
Where in here is their contribution of $350,000 or $300,000 to $400,000? Where in here? I get it's town money, but that was already be bonded underneath the 63 million that we bonded. Where in here is their contribution?
This is just where the money's coming from to pay for the project. What you're talking about, Glenn, is what's in the assessment table and the school's contribution. And that's what I think Steve needs to talk about.
No, what I'm talking about is if we had this school project and the school project had wells and pumps and all these things built into the end cost of $78 million, which the taxpayers are paying $63 million, where is that into this assessment? Because there's $300,000 that we just talked about that's sitting somewhere that's already been approved in a bonded thing for this amount of money for a specific water. So
Yeah.
if that is in for specific water, why aren't we rolling it into this 1.8 million and dropping it down to a palatable number? Now we're talking 800,000 to the town.
Marcia, go ahead,
So
Marcia.
the answer to that is, it's the next step after this, that the 1.5 million is our fronting of all the costs. And then after that comes the assessment, and that's where the 350 would come out. That after the 1.5 million, either to reduce our assessment specifically or to reduce all of the assessments.
We don't have all the numbers because Greg's number is already, we know, is high. He's got a 10% contingency built in on his cost per square foot, or cost per foot, we know, is on the high side. We have a
Yes.
10% in here contingency at 144. We don't have the 350 in here from the school side. So this 1.5 number is now down below 1.2, 1.1. And then we're talking about the 249. We're talking about $800,000 instead of 1.1 million, less than that, 650,000 compared to the 1.1 on the backside. Why? Let's get all the figures in order. Let's get a table that shows us the whole thing, the whole story, because this doesn't tell us the whole story as far as I'm concerned. Because if we are 380 per foot, and that's a little high, and we still have a 10% contingency, the 10% contingency can wash out. You built it into the 380 number. That number there holds a 10% contingency already in the footage. So that 144 goes away. So that would drop us to 10. And if you got we're at $700,000 is what we're looking at right now. Am I missing something?
So Glenn, everything you said's right, and it's in the assessment table that Steve has. And again, he's got to be the one on this call to share that information with you guys. The work is done. We did the analysis. What Marcia talked about, we've done the spreadsheets. The assessment table's done. We just got to get that to you. And I
So
think
what's
that's
the
what
final number? What's the final? If it's all the work is done, what is the number? What is the net project cost? Because it's not 1.44 anymore. And what is the school portion of this? Because again, this number has dropped considerably. I mean, what is the cost per foot right now, Greg? What is your estimate on cost per foot?
I've done nothing on any estimates since April of 2020.
And what was it then?
It's what you're looking at.
I thought the last meeting we talked, that was considerably high.
It is on the high side. The number that Aquarian uses is 360.
Okay. So 360, so that again, it's almost 10%. So the 10% then washes out. So I mean, how do we get a better number on that right now? I mean, what process are we in to get another number on there?
I would go back to Aquarian and I would have them, basically give us an estimate based on current cost for steel and labor cost.
And who's doing the work, Aquarian?
Well, no, we have to go out to public bid. This is a public project. So it's going to go out to public bid. Aquarian, we've already hired CCA. They're waiting on the approval to do the survey work so we can finish the design so we can go out to bid. That's kind of the step lines here.
And what was the process with the power lines? We were talking about doing something else. Steve wanted to run something parallel with this. I thought
the gas line.
The gas line. What's the status on that?
They're running a gas line up that road. We're trying to coordinate that together so that we basically hopefully only dig one trench and shut down Candlewood Lake Road only once. So we're trying to coordinate the gas line with the water main.
And you'd have to pave it only once as well.
That's the hope. We're trying to save some money by doing it together.
Can we get a breakdown from the steering committee of what their expected cost for that gas main is going to be for the street repair and digging up portion of it? And we can deduct some of that off of this potentially.
The problem is, Mark, the state might not allow us to do them simultaneously. That's what we have to. I mean, the only thing we can maybe do is hold off on the paving. We could dig it up. We can lay the water main. We have to bury the water main as it stands now, my understanding, then dig up next to it, put in the gas main, cover it up. But paving, we could definitely maybe get away with once.
Yeah, so Ralph Tedesco and I have been on the phone with the Department of Public Health on this very issue, and they've issued some letters about what we would have to do the final course on the pavement under one contract and split the cost between the two projects, the gas project and the water main project. They have to be separate because the gas project is just for the school. This water main project is off of a grant. So there's all kinds of other formalities we have to go through to keep the costs separate under one contract.
All right. I don't think we can make a vote on this tonight. I think what we need to do is to get a list of our questions together to finalize this. I think we need to relook at the numbers to make sure the numbers make more sense, and where does, like Mark said, where's the school side come from and where are we putting that in? If all the work is done, Steve should be able to send that out to us this week and we should be able to look at it.
Okay.
Again, the most important question for me, the only one that I'll submit is, can a public hearing be held so this can take the normal course?
And
for
I
approval?
just sent that question to Tom Beecher. He has not responded yet.
Thank you, Marcia.
But Mark, we still need to know all the numbers and everything. I mean,
I agree.
I think.
But if it could go to a public hearing, we may not need to know all the numbers. Let the public decide.
Yeah, but without the numbers, how can they make a decision either? I mean, if we can't
Not my
make a decision.
presentation. I'm not going to tell the first selectman how to do his job.
No, he's doing,
He knows what he's doing.
I think we just need, Greg, I think you understand what we need from this meeting. Also, if we have any other questions, we'll forward them to you. We will make this a priority in the next couple of weeks to get back and sort it all out. How's that?
That sounds good. So I will pass this on to Steve. Marcia and I will get together and make sure we represent your questions and issues as best we can. And we'll work on that tomorrow.
All right. I think that's it, team, for Greg.
All right. I'm off to another Zoom meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep. Good night.
All right. Since Steve's not here, Marcia, it's your show now.
All right, let me share my screen. I guess I have to do that first. All right, can you see?
Yes.
Yep. Fire away.
All right, and I have to just say that I'm a little bit delinquent here this month. So I'm starting with the audit status. So you see that first, and that'll explain some of the rest. The auditors will be here next week. They'll be here for 2 weeks. They're doing it a little bit in person. We've got the room reserved for them. And they're doing it a little bit online. We'll be on track for the statements, the funds, each of the separate columns. We've been working on reconciling each of the small funds, and the way that you do this is do all the little funds first, and then because it's a lot easier to see, oh, look, that grant didn't wash out, we're missing $54. Where's that $54? Whereas if you start with the general fund, you're never going to see $54. So we've got most of the little funds completed. We've gone through every department and said, this is where we think you stand. Can you verify that you agree with that? They all have their little Excel worksheets from years and years of not being able to trust the finance office. And this year that, Munis is right, and so we just have to tell them what to add and subtract from their Excel records. So hopefully we'll get them to stop doing the Excel records going forward. So the small funds, we're working on the capital projects now. That just pulling them forward. We've had them reconciled and just trying to get them into the statements. It's just a manual process. And then from there, it's the general fund. Both should be in good shape. That where I think that we're going to fall behind for them for this meeting for next week. But we'll certainly get it before the end of the year so the reports can be issued. We know this is a good place that they can cut off. It wouldn't slow them down on other stuff. Is the full accrual statements, Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 on the financial statements that have the long-term debt and the capital assets. The capital assets, we're working with, we put in our budget for a new company to come in. Then what they'll do, and it's in your budget actually, that the Board of Finance budget, and what they'll do is come in and tag every item and put it in a depreciation schedule, and they'll give us the estimated historical cost, and they'll give us the replacement value so that we can have an insurance record and a depreciation schedule that are the same. We've never done that before that I know of. And then from there, we'll add systems to it to, for example, that there'll be a list of every location, and of what you do is a year later, you say, okay, here's your list. Is everything still on there? And that's part of the controls over the assets. So we'll get the list first. We can add the system to it during the year. But I just would prefer, if I could, to use an updated list than the old list that we have. And they should be out here early October is what we're talking about. The pensions, we've had some issues with Mass Mutual on the pensions. We've been waiting weeks for them to resolve the issues. Finally today, I got a little angry and happened to notice that one of my former clients is on the board of Mass Mutual. And so I just pointed out that I really need this resolved. And there's a lot of internal control issues at Mass Mutual. And I would be reaching out to her. And they did call me back within 10 minutes. So hopefully they're on that. But once we get the Mass Mutual resolved, it goes to the actuary. So that's a little bit behind. Not a big deal, but I wanted it perfect for next week.
Marcia, Mass Mutual, the pension stuff was a source of delay earlier this spring, right? For the last one?
It is, and what happens is that they don't give a bank reconciliation, or they don't give a bank statement. I've never seen an investment company that doesn't give you a bank statement, that you have to go pull reports from their website, and it still doesn't balance. And so then I have to give them my summary, send them my summary, and say, could you tell us what the differences are? And they don't respond, or they respond partially, and it's unacceptable that part of their internal controls is giving us a bank statement so we can look at it and balance it. But that so far has not caused them any stress that we don't like this.
Okay.
So that's the issue. But again, it shouldn't slow. It won't slow us down past December 31st.
Okay.
The revenue and expenses, I just haven't. We've been working on these other things. I just haven't gotten to it. I don't know of any significant changes from last month when we gave you the estimate. That we're working through the final balancing process of 2020, as I just talked about. For the 2021 year, the biggest changes are with the COVID budget, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We've got little things where budgets have changed. Someone's come in, come out, but I don't know, again, of any big variances from the budget for this month, but we'll take a look at the report next month. we're a little out straight, and then Kevin has been, they've called him heroic, has doing a great job at the purchasing, taking over from the purchase agent while he's gone. But that also means that he's not helping me with my balancing. We just talked 2 weeks ago. I didn't update the economic recovery dashboard. The COVID grant status, the changes from this month are in red. That as far as FEMA goes, in the last 2 weeks, we have had our first meeting with FEMA. It was last week. He, like many of the people in FEMA, is brand new and really can't help us on questions and things. They did come out with a change where they were going to pay for PPE and they were going to pay for cleaning of public buildings. They're now saying, they came out last week, they're now saying as of September 15th, they're only paying for cleaning of public buildings where it is the emergency operations that, and they've cut that back. And so you'll see that on our COVID grant, that some reports look like it's ever, but the one, when I go right to the FEMA site, it looks like it starts September 15th. And of course, our consultant doesn't know, but we're working on weekly meetings with them. The CARES Act money for the school, that last time it was frozen, it's no longer frozen. The application is with the state, and it has been approved. But right now we're using it against COVID, against Chromebooks, and there's no Chromebooks to be found.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I distinctly remember we had a meeting to fund the purchase of Chromebooks. A question was deliberately asked, are they holding them and will they hold this quote? And if we approve this tonight, will you be able to order them tomorrow? And we were told yes.
Yes.
Do we know, and I know it's not under your purview, but do you have any idea, since we don't have any Board of Ed rep here, do we know why that fell through?
The same way that the desks fell through, that the salespeople, which I know more about that because Kevin was doing it. They said they had them, they can get them, and then as soon as you order them that and commit, they say, oh, well, we can't guarantee when we're getting them. They said one thing until they got the check, which we stopped payment on, but then they said something else, and I'm afraid it's I don't know if it's dishonesty. I don't know if it's over aggressive sales, but the Chromebooks and the desks both happened the same situation under different people trying to order them. It's a mess out there.
Well, I would hope that we would put them on some sort of list where we do not use them once times are normal again.
Yes, and they actually came back with the desks. They actually came back very nasty that to us and said they were going to put us on a list. But it was that they were just so aggressive. Correct.
But I didn't ask a specific question about desks. We specifically talked about Chromebooks availability, and we're told we had it in writing that they were available. So a vendor fell through.
Yep.
More than one, in case you're talking about.
So I'm just saying that that one I wasn't as intimately involved with, but the one with Kevin, I was copied on the emails, and that's why I'm saying that that's why I put them together in the same bucket.
Was that just with the low bidder, or did you move on to the second bidder or third bidders, or no?
So that was the low bidder. We moved on to the second bidder that for the desks. So for the Chromebooks, they're not available at all. For the desks we had, we moved on to the next bidder. They were not the low bidder. They're slightly more expensive. I think we're talking $5,000 to $10,000, and the desks should actually be nicer. that as it turns out.
Again, but the desks, we're buying desks that we're not going to be able to use in the new school. The whole thing just doesn't make sense. That there should be some continuity, that someone's got to be driving the boat, that, hey, we know what ones we want to use in our school, let's buy them now.
That's a discussion for the
Yep.
school steering.
I
Mark,
said, I'm sorry.
and they have consultants that are looking into the whole process. So that we got to let go.
And we did talk about that with them to say, couldn't we just buy those in advance? And there were a number of reasons why they told me they couldn't.
All right, next page.
The Department of Public Health, not much has changed with that grant. It's over. We've spent it all, 14,000. Small Cities Block Grant, I've attended several different events, and it's not really for us. That we just are too wealthy of a community. The state pass through of the application is due September 30th. We have to have our FEMA paperwork first. So that'll be done the last week of September to try. That's our biggest hope for funding. I haven't heard any changes for that. So they'll fund things through June 30th. Then the Education Coronavirus Relief Fund, we talked about that at the last meeting, that Glenn asked about it. It was 146,000. And we talked about transportation. I had quoted it at 75, but Steve corrected me, it's 115. That of the 146, 115 was for transportation. The education members there said that they didn't quite understand that. Well, lo and behold, the next day or 2 days later, we got a letter saying from the state saying, oops, they sent out the wrong form, that everyone's numbers were wrong, that because of the transportation, that our new amount of that, because that was after it was in the newspaper, our new amount for that is $54,009. No process has been received yet on how we get that, what do we have to do. So we're still waiting on that. Down at the bottom are different grants that people have asked me about. Why can't we get this or that? And the reasons why we can't get them, nothing's changed there. New grants that we have election grants. We have the state election grant, the safe elections for $2,700. We received it yesterday. We have the secure elections for $1,000. The state has said that they will help fund the elections. I don't have any details yet. I was talking to Ryan Murphy tonight. He said that he thinks Danbury has details. So I've asked if he could reach out to his contact there and give us any details they might have, because we don't have any yet. And then the town clerk is also applying for a grant, a private grant or nonprofit grant. But again, we don't have any of the details yet. She's just going through the application process. Okay. And then there's this ELC grant for the health department that we've been awarded. That it's $65,870 over the next 30 months. We don't have any details. We have to fill out an application. So our health director is working on trying to figure out the best needs for it. But right now we're doing contact tracing using volunteers, and it's an arduous process, and we don't know how long the volunteers will hold in there. So he's looking into that. And I have the wrong thing copied and pasted, and so the status is not applicable here.
All right.
Capital still in progress. That fund balance, that Ginny sent you a fund balance policy today. There's two things really that we want your input from. the structure. That do you like the way it's set out on how we would how we decided on fund balance, how we would get to fund balance, and then the specifics as far as what the range would be. So if we look at the structure, that there's a number of different categories for what fund balance are we going to use. That and each of the different rating agencies uses a slightly different fund definition of fund balance or segments of fund balance. And so in there we talk about, we want that when we measure our fund balance, we want it to be assigned and unassigned fund balance. And again, it talks about it in the policy. How do we get there? And my proposal is that we increase our fund balance. Fund balance increases naturally by budget surpluses, essentially profits, that if we're doing a balanced budget. So if we were to take and preserve half of our budget surplus and say, you know, if we need something, we're only going to go into this little pot. If you think of it like the Board of Ed keeps track of that non-lapsing fund, that and you take what they do is they take what they didn't spend and then they ask for that as part of a non-lapsing fund. What I'm suggesting is we take what we didn't spend and any extra revenue, take half of it. That way, half goes to increase our budget surplus. The other half potentially is spent on things as they come up. It doesn't have to be spent. It talks in there about how we protected the fund balance. Well, the big way to protect the fund balance is a large contingency. That so that's included in there. How do we stay within the range? It talks a little bit about that. If we're a little under, we kind of do the same process over again. And then what if we exceed the range a few years down the line? It talks about what it could be spent on. So we tried to hit all the areas in the structure. The last few pages our risk assessment, that we talk about different areas like liquidity and cash flow, new construction coming up, of where we might need to be. And that's a bit subjective. So you could look at that and say, you know, I think that you rated us, you know, a 3 and I would put us a 4. Well, that would change the range. But that's looking for us to have a 22% fund balance range when we do that. That's from the government finance officer's best practices. Our peers don't have a 22% range. They have something lower than that. So that's why we didn't pick that as a range. And right now the range is 18 to 20% is the range we think we should look for. And a target contingency appropriation of 0.5% of the total budget. All of this included in here would be the elimination of the non-lapsing fund that for the Board of Education, that if we're trying as a town to get the fund balance as a whole, that we would want to bifurcate that and to have a separate money for the Board of Ed. We would have it all together. So you received that just today. We're looking for you to read it over the next month or so and give us feedback, ask us questions.
So a couple questions on that, Mark. I appreciate it. I flipped through it. Obviously didn't read in detail. I plan on doing so. 2 questions. One, did you model it off of other towns or off of a best practice template?
Yes, that I had worked with some towns that in my previous life and liked some of their ideas. So I took it from there. I took the sections of what we should have included in our fund balance policy, the structure. It's it's more or less, I think, my own words, but as far as what should be in there, I took it from the government finance officers, and then the rating agencies all had what their methodology is for reviewing it, and it's kind of discussed in there. And I took some ideas from them. So I didn't steal it from anyone in total. I just used my CPA for cut, paste, and adapt.
No wrong. There's nothing wrong with plagiarism. The other question is the Board of Finance role in this policy setting. Are we guidance, oversight, approval, participation? What is our actual role?
Steve says it is just guidance or input, but on a practical matter, if you control fund balance, that if we had this policy and you didn't agree with it, you're going to approve a budget that is whatever you do agree with. So we kind of have to work together on it.
Okay. So ideally, we would have agreement on the policy and directionally prior to budget season. That makes sense. So
Absolutely. And the reason we talked about this also was just when we come to finalize the 2020 numbers, we kind of want this in our mind so we can get an idea of where we're going. If it's a whole different set of decisions, if we say, we're at 11.89% and I think we should be at 10%, that makes a big difference.
Yep. Okay, good. Look forward to the discussion.
Any other questions on that?
Oh, go ahead.
I am done until we get to let me see if that's next.
No,
I
it's
am
not.
done
We gotta-
until we get to the iterative budget process.
Right. Okay. On to Dan. Anything on the audit?
Nothing specific, just in response to Marcia's timeline that she walked through, and this is my first time seeing it because I am, I'll be honest with you, getting Marcia just a tad bit concerned that timelines are shifting. The original timeline was aggressive, never expected that. Now it's being delayed from September, and I do worry that with Mass Mutual and pension and the auditors getting into busy season, that I know we're still 4 months away, but that December 31st is going to come quickly and we're going to be pushing up against it. That worries me. I would hate for the auditors to push us. I would hate for our vendors to push us beyond that. It's my strong goal here that this year we get it done in December so that we have 20 closed out and known as we go into budgeting for 22. That should be paramount. So I just urge you to continue to push the auditors, continue to push your staff and yourself as well. And to the extent that, the next RFP is contingent upon them hitting that timeline for us, that's a conversation I'm willing to have.
Yep, and I think that it's doable, and it's more doable than last year. And the reason is because one of the big things last year between now and December 31st was a bonding, and the bonding probably takes 60 to 80 hours of my time. That just coordinating everything in the official statement, and that's behind us now. That we just bumped that forward. So I have no idea what happens with COVID and these 12 grants that we're juggling, but I do think that I do feel more confident than last year. I felt confident last year, but I feel I reassure myself that we've moved that bonding ahead 2 months or 3 months, so I won't have that too.
Okay, that's all I had, Glenn.
Very good. All right. On to the new business. Go ahead, Marcia. We're back to the iterative budget review.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped the, never mind. Go ahead.
All right, that if I bring this over to the screen, I can make it bigger here. Let me let you see it first. And, all right, so you should see this on my screen, and let me add this wrong way because last night they could not see it very well. So we talked last month that about the budget, and one of the things that I did was change the format of it. That before I had it by object, but then when I started to do budget to actuals internally, it's a very ugly statement and a very ugly format to try and get it by object, because it doesn't tell you what department. You have to know the codes. So I've flipped it on you, and but the numbers are the same, but I've done it by department. And if we look at what's new, there's the theme, there's two new things essentially. Library, which we said last month was still to come for their reopening, and town clerk. And so that the new items for this meeting are in red. That we had the August elections, and now we're trying to work for the August primaries, and now we're trying to work to the November elections. And so these are the additions that we've talked about. One thing that just came up today is that these manual ballots, we've got 13,000 voters, and we're talking about 324 hours of time is what they requested. Now they're talking to some of the other towns, and apparently that sounds like we might be underestimating how much work this is going to be. So the town clerk came to us today to say that she thinks this estimate is low. I'm just letting you know that so that we may be coming back to you. For example, again, Ryan tonight was talking about Danbury. We have 13,000 voters. They have 30,000. They have maybe 10 people nearly full-time between now and the elections. Bethel has 10 part-time people. And this is the equivalent of one full-time person. So we're concerned with that. But this was as of August 31st, the best we knew. The absentee ballots, we need to get absentee ballots for the elections. We need to have the stamps that go with it, same thing that we had up here, and labels to send them all out. Again, the state has talked about help, but they haven't quantified help. And we have no other option but to have elections. That we go down here to the library. The library came to us with a budget of closer to 15 to 20,000. Steve sent it back. They're going to absorb some of the smaller costs in their budget. The door monitor being the biggest cost. Because it was so costly that this is 8 weeks and 24 hours a week, that Steve had said, well, we've got to just cut back the number of hours. We can't be open 54 hours a week. So that's one of their cutbacks. Sanitizer stations, stanchions for moving people through, walkie-talkies for coordinating internally, and monitor shields to protect the monitors, because if they're going to have these public computers have to keep wiping them down, they didn't want to ruin the monitors. And then the last thing on the list are the track, signs for the tracks.
Hold on, Marcia.
Sure.
Are you guys getting feedback when I talk?
No.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, it's happening with everybody.
Walkie-talkies, 10 walkie-talkies seems high, but what kind of walkie-talkies are they buying for $13? I can't buy toy walkie-talkies for my children for $13. Mine cost about $150 each. Where's that number come from?
They have priced it out, and I'm trying to, this is my PDF, and I'm gonna try to get to my, other one without having it all over the screen, that, to see if I can find that, a lot of them, they had links to where they were going to purchase that. So hold on, let me tell you if I have a link.
And if those are the real cheap ones, they probably take some kind of AA batteries, and they better have a line item because you're going to burn up 4 batteries a day per walkie-talkie.
Well, they can take care of that in their budget. Walkie-talkies.
Could you just look into it tomorrow? I don't want to
Yep.
make you drag everybody through it tonight. I just see one thing like that that pops up, and you question things.
It's an estimate from Amazon.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on the library? And then the last one, as we've gone through this, that we've found just one thing has popped up since last month, and that is with the schools being open, trying to make sure that people are off the track so that they're not interrupting the cohorts, that keeping people off school property, both during the day and after the day. So Parks and Rec is looking for some signs to do that. When we look at all of these costs, the total is $178,000 for everything so far. The first, and that's the 3 tranches. The first one were the computers for the schools, just the way it was approved. It was approved in our budget. So I have it here, that last month you approved $28,000. This month we're looking for a transfer from the COVID contingency for $25,000, $24,877. We have some changes to the revenue as well, that the registrar shields, $900. I believe that's already come in. FEMA, we had estimated at $16,000. As we discussed, that there is a policy change. We believe it's only after the 15th of September. So just prorating that we may not get the 16, we may get $3,000 less. And again, that's our best guess today. Safe polls, 27, we've received that. Secure polls, 1,000, we haven't received that. There's money out there from elections. We have no reliable data at this time, but I didn't want to forget that, so we put that in. So if you agree tonight, we're asking you to transfer $24,877 from COVID to those library elections and those signs. The net cost of all of this, including those computers, is $160. And as far as there's no, other than we just talked about the election workers, more election workers that came up today, we know of no other costs that we haven't already talked about as of August 31st and as of today.
So this 24,877 was approved last night by the Board of Selectmen.
That's correct.
Okay. So then I will make a motion that we approve the transfer charges in the amount of $24,877.45 from the COVID cost budget into the expense categories listed on the attached report for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Mark, you got concerns. I can see it.
The walkie-talkies.
We've got to keep, no, I have bigger concerns than walkie-talkies. We got to keep things moving forward. We got to let Steve manage the town. So,
I personally agree with you on that, Mark. I mean, I think processes are in place. I think nobody knows how to handle this monster as it comes up, and we're trying to stay on top of it. And 24,000 is a reasonable number, with most of it being part of this election, you know, the election stuff that we have to deal with. Eileen,
I agree.
Dan,
Yep.
Ricky,
I agree.
Brianna,
Yep.
any more discussion? All right, bring it to vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes. All right. Now we're on to the budget format discussion. It's budget season already. I know we just got through it. It's time to start talking about the budget. I think Marcia is already a couple steps ahead of us on this. We, as the Board of Finance, can set the way we want the budget presented to us from the town and from the Board of Ed. And I think Marcia has been working with Ken and Joan on her side to bring us a format that we all have seen before and like to see. So go ahead, Marcia.
So we did have a conversation on that because they need to get started on the budget, and they liked the format from last year that they provided. Although that they would have, I would like a few changes. One, the special ed, that we put numbers to the students and we can tell year over year, do comparisons. And they seemed open to that they'd already kind of started it last year and thought it was helpful. They're already dividing short-term and long-term subs, which seems to be a significant decision point for them. That on the special ed ones, it would cover transportation, tuition, and excess cost grants. And then they have the addition that they would like to make is just putting in, as I understand it, subtotals in the categories to help tie it to their budget a little better. For example, if you look at the category for supplies, that school supplies, that you'll see that they've got little sections for here's art, here's music, whatever the sections are, the functions. And they would subtotal those so that it'll tie right out to when they put it in their budget. But it would still give the same information, might give better information. And so they were going to work with that, and I think bring a formal proposal on what their budget would look like to you at their next meeting.
Okay.
And if there's other things that you're interested in tweaking or making, getting more details between now and the next meeting would be really helpful for them to know.
All right. Any thoughts from our side? That we're starting this process. Marcia's having good conversations with the school side. Is there anything that you'd like to see as a group for Marcia to work on with the school side?
I know last year when we were starting the budget process and I started looking at surrounding towns, one of the things that I thought was helpful is that a lot of the reports went down to granularity by school. So you can really see the changes over time. And I know that there's, your student population adjusts depending on if you have bubble classes and stuff like that. But I think it helped to just see that resources were being utilized well, or if you can see trends in specific buildings. I don't think we've otherwise discussed it. I think I informally had mentioned it once, but I don't know if the accounting is down to that level so that we could even see that.
It absolutely is. And they did their budget last year by schools, that they have about 12 different departments, you might want to call them, the 4 schools, special ed, IT, facilities, superintendent, I forgot what the other ones were, but they have about 12 different ones. And so their budget was done by that. I think that with the detail that they gave us, I think it would be very helpful to see their budget versus actual done by that as well. And that is very easy for them to do. That Munis can handle all of that.
And I think that will help us too when we hopefully have a new Huckleberry school to be able to see those changes over time and consolidation of elementary schools and what that looks like.
If you have ideas as we go through the month, that if you want to shoot them out to me, that we can coordinate that with the school.
Well, Marcia, I appreciate you trying to get ahead of this, because as we know, it's a struggle every year to get things that we're comfortable with. We find math errors, we find all that stuff as they present things. That said, the best thing for me is standardized. If we can get them to give us the same reporting year after year after year, it's much easier to follow. But along with that, they'd also have to give us what they spent, right? I'm assuming, well, we know more so than even the town is the nature of their beast. They transfer money between what they had asked for and what they spend it on, at a pace that exceeds my brain capacity to follow. But it would be nice to get a concise report of what they actually spent the money on, so we know what they're asking money for that they never spent money on.
So probably the same columns that we have in our budget. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. But that being said, they are in for a heck of a time this year, because I can't imagine putting together a budget with the coronavirus and the moving targets that they are going to have to hit. It is going to be a nightmare for them. And I would extend, if they want to come to us early or ask individually as a group, whatever, I'm here for them. I'm sure everybody here would be here for them. So we want to help them get it right, because it is going to be hard this year more than any.
And hopefully some of that will help with using these project costs for the COVID grants, that they'll let us pull out. The reason I changed the formatting is now I can just pull out the budget to actual for everything that we've done, that we can see where we stand, and they've got the same thing, so we could see the budget to actual on what they've asked for COVID. But also next year, when we look at the budget to actual, you can see what was the original budget, and have COVID kind of out of the way, similar to what you had asked us to do, Mark, with one-time capital costs that are in the budget. And so this would be the one-time COVID cost. So it's still, trying to figure out what's going to happen is the hard part, but reporting it hopefully is a little easier.
Right, and even more so than the COVID costs, the hidden costs behind it, the sub costs are going to be haywire, the para cost, everything is going to be 10 times harder than it was before. And I wish them the best, and anything I can do again.
We can't wish them the best. We got to help them through it. I think more
That's
than
what
ever.
that's what I'm getting
Right.
to. And again, I'm willing. I don't know that they want any of our help, but I'm willing to help if they want it.
On that same topic, Marcia, I don't know the best way to present this, but if there was a way to code or tell us or tell everybody which budget line items are truly bottoms up, number of widgets times price per widget, which ones are, here's what we spent last year, we're going to do that times 3%, which ones are pure assumptions. That would really be helpful, because I don't want to play gotcha. Nobody wants to play gotcha, but when we think that something is bottoms up and it turns out that it's last year plus, then that becomes contentious. So if they could alert people ahead of time how they came up with at least the major numbers, that would really be helpful.
100% agree.
Yeah, I do too. Fixed variable and like you
Yep.
say, no, that total category of wild card category that we can all have different views on, but the fixed is the
Yep.
fixed is the fix. So let's knock it out where we can, right?
Well, Glenn, the fix is the fix is the fix if they get their math right. Take the
That's
Chromebooks.
true.
How many Chromebooks did they ask for and how many did they need?
I personally believe, Mark, and I'll say this in public, I think they got the point right now, and I think they're moving in a direction with Marcia that I think our point got across. How's that? If I get egg on my face, I'll be the first one, but I think the attention is going to be there, and I think that the bell was rung, and I think we're going to see better results. How's that?
Great.
So I'm really believing in that. And for the record, for the meeting tonight, Rosa did chirp in and say that, they didn't have anything to offer, that they're extremely busy and they're having their subcommittee meeting on Monday and that she'll get back to us with anything important. So she did reach out to us and let us know. So I wanted to, make sure that everybody knows that, she didn't not come to attend, that they had a lot of things going on right now and they're dealing with a lot of things. And then Monday they're having their subcommittee meeting.
Understood.
Marcia, you're seeing, and what I said is you're seeing good cooperation currently, right? With the school side on the numbers, correct?
Absolutely. If I could change one thing, and maybe Eileen could help me with it, is that none of this really has gone, the budget numbers and the 2 years that I've sat on the Education Finance Committee meetings, none of the budget has gone through there to the extent that I think it should go through. That, I mean, it's kind of passed through, but no deep dive or anything. And hopefully that'll be changing this year.
Okay, I think that's all we can do, right? One step at a time, right?
That's correct.
All right. Any other discussion on this? Any other items before the board? Hearing none, move on. Executive session was supposed to be with Steve. Steve couldn't attend the meeting, so there will be no executive session. Any public comment? All right. Mark, take it away.
This is not my favorite part of the meeting, but I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everybody seconding. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Aye.